Today, we are going to discuss the biggest names on the trade market and which ones make sense for the Detroit Tigers. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Friday, December 20th, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome in, welcome all. Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully we can send you out to your or on your weekend in a fun and entertaining way. Today, we are going to talk a lot about the trade market, and we will discuss the biggest Jeff Passan of ESPN just put out an article on Thursday morning, I believe Wednesday night, Thursday morning, that highlighted the biggest names in baseball's trade market the rest of the winter. And there's some names we have not, quite a few actually, names we have not talked about yet on this show that are somewhat either new developments or just straight up surprising. So we are going to go over that list and talk about if any of those names make sense for the Detroit Tigers. We'll take a look at the news and notes and rumors from around the league. And we're going to start off here by talking about the news and notes from the Tigers organization. Not a whole lot has happened in the last couple of days, but Akil Baddoo did clear waivers. We talked about him being put on waivers, being DFA'd, removed from the 40-man roster last week. He did clear waivers earlier this week. We just didn't have time to talk about it. So he remains in the Tigers organization and has been assigned to AAA Toledo. It's going to be a really, kind of interesting, I guess, development to keep an eye out for. Because, in spring training, the 60-man injured list opens back up, and there will be inevitably a few players that end up on the 60-day. And I just wonder what the pecking order is. Like, if they told Baddoo, like, hey, you're still going to get an invite to spring training, you're still going to be in AAA, and once we put, X, Y, and Z on the 60-day IL, or like once somebody gets hurt inevitably, then you will be, the second option or the first option or one of the first names that we call to get put back on the 40-man. It'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But I have been talking a lot over the last several months about how I thought other players were going to be in front of Akil Baddoo in terms of DFA, or, that he maybe had a little bit, not trade value on his own, but maybe enough trade value to like slap onto another trade that you were already doing to kind of like give it, push the trade through and kind of get it over the hill. And more and more, it looks like that's just blatantly incorrect. And I still think there's tools there, and he's still young enough where the organization clearly doesn't want to just completely give up on him. That's why he is still in the organization for the time being. But every day that passes, like, he was just put on waivers and nobody claimed him. Like, he was free for 29 other teams to take for minor league salary, basically, and they all said no. And I think that's just kind of clearing and focusing on the fact that he just hasn't been able to hit since his rookie year, really. And the other tools are great. And if he is able to hit at some point consistently at the major league level, that he might turn into a pretty darn, decent, solid outfielder, lefty, some power, walk, speed. We talk about all that all the time. But, the fact that he cleared waivers and is still in the organization and no one tried to trade for him, no one tried to claim him, no one tried to do anything, I think is kind of a testament to what I say it all the time on this show. It's one of our favorite sayings here, right? If you organizations will tell you how they feel about players if you just listen to them. And I think that probably reigns true with Baddoo and the rest of the league. We'll see how the Tigers continue to handle the Akil Baddoo situation really hoping, honestly, that they do keep him. He's still young enough, and I think that there's still a chance that they can tweak some things with his mechanics and try to get a decent hitter out of him yet. The Detroit Tigers also signed back Brendan White on a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Brendan White, another casualty of the 40-man roster over the last couple of weeks. He was DFA'd, and then the Tigers, clearly are bringing him back on a minor league deal. So he's another one where I kind of feel similarly about him as I do Baddoo, just like the pitching version of that conversation, I think. Like, this is a guy that has a phenomenal slider that moves a ton and spins a ton, and just wasn't able to locate it very well in his first and only stint in the majors so far, at least prolonged stint in the majors. And when he hung it, it got crushed. But when he put it where he wanted to, especially against right-handed hitters, he was really good still. So I think that there's a lot of inconsistencies. And most importantly, he's coming off an injury that sidelined him for the entire 2024 campaign. So I think just, gives him a chance, low pressure. You can slowly work back into a routine, get his arm back. I was going to say his arm back under him, combining get his arm back and get his legs under him. And hopefully the velocity bounces back to where it was and the slider hasn't changed. And I think that honestly, if those two things happen, he's probably a guy that after a few injuries happen is added to the 40-man and we see pitching in Detroit again in, July or August or something of this year. Speaking of pitchers that may pitch in July or August, or July or August again, I guess is what I said, but this is not. And again, this is the first time that this player has been a member of the Tigers organization. The Tigers make an external minor league signing of Ryan Miller, right-handed pitcher. This is also a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. Has bounced around to a few different teams, pitched for the Angels, has pitched for the Rangers, etc. Has decent minor league numbers. This is a profile that when we look at what the organization has been fond of bringing in, he really fits that. This guy has a mid-90s sinker. Shocker, right? That's a huge surprise given the track record of the Scott Harris era of the last couple of years. We've really utilized a lot of kind of bowling ball, sinker ball pitchers that have sinkers that aren't just like upper 80s sinkers, but legitimate, high velo two-seam fastballs. So I think that is, it's a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. He's not on the 40-man roster or anything. There's some decent secondary stuff to get paired with that as well. But obviously there has been, it's a minor league contract. We're not breaking news. It's not earth shattering or anything. But he's another guy that it wouldn't surprise me if he started off in Toledo and then at some point in the middle of the season was called up. I don't think he'll make the team out of camp just because there's so much competition and depth already in the bullpen for your Detroit Tigers. But I do think that A, it's never a bad thing to have too much depth, and B, that he probably will, even if it is only for a couple of weeks or a few innings, pitch for the Tigers at some point this season. So another right-handed sinker ball thrower for your Detroit Tigers that they're going to try to work out of the bullpen. We'll see what happens this year. Let's talk about the potential trade candidates. We have a list from Jeff Passan over at ESPN of, I think it's 11 names, 10, 11, 12 names of some under-the-radar trade candidates, some under the radar, some very obvious, like Nolan Arenado's on here. No kidding. So some under the radar, some fairly obvious, but a list of the biggest names to watch out for in the trade market the rest of the offseason. We'll talk about if the Tigers maybe are a match for any of these names. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, including myself, obviously, and saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, once the best features in the app were all inputted and turned on, the subscription tracker was easily my favorite. I found, I want to say 4 was the number of subscriptions that I just completely forgot I was paying for. One of them was like 5 years old, so that was really embarrassing. And now with Rocket Money, there's no more stressing about budget every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals this year faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Also got to talk to y'all about our friends over at Select Quote. The World Series, the Super Bowl, and the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing. That's teamwork. And teamwork can also help protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to help keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. They have so many great features over there, and you know what? They are one of America's leading insurance brokers for nearly 40 years, experiencing and helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. You invest so much time to take care of yourself and be your healthiest, best version of you. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that hard work. Head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2, Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, as always, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday recapping the weekend that will be and any news and notes that come out of it as we keep this offseason train rolling. Let's talk about some of the biggest names on the trade market that are available for everybody, according to Jeff Passan of ESPN. Number 1 on this list is Arenado. We'll talk about Nolan Arenado again in segment 3 when we just kind of bounce around the league and talk about news and notes and how they may affect Detroit. But it is rumored that Arenado used his no-trade clause and rejected a trade to the Houston Astros. So that doesn't mean he's going to be a Tiger tomorrow. He made a short list of 6 teams that he would be willing to go to. The Astros were not on it, and they still made a trade anyway. And then he used his no-trade clause. Does that sound familiar to Tigers fans? Maybe a la 2023 trade deadline. Let me know. So Luis Robert Jr. is on this list. I would be thrilled, okay? But it's not happening. And the reason why that, I think I've been very vocal on here about how I think the White Sox should trade Luis Robert Jr. But I think that the Tigers are just not a fit here. The reason why is because of the price tag. This is a guy who has an incredibly team-friendly situation going on right now. And I cannot imagine that they're going to let him go for anything less than an absolute, Gretzky-esque package that would be in return. That's probably a slight exaggeration. I'm not sure anybody's going to hit that ever again. But you get my point. It's going to be a lot. It is going to be an awful lot to get Luis Robert Jr. And while the Tigers do need a right-handed hitting outfielder and hopefully get one that can play good defense and is really fast, which Robert does both of those things well when he's locked in, I find it hard to believe that the Tigers want a right-handed outfielder so bad that they're going to be willing to give up the top prospect haul and the return that the White Sox would almost certainly be asking for, especially in division. I don't think this happens in a million years. But I do think that the White Sox should trade him from a non-Tigers perspective, just a league-wide perspective. I think he absolutely should get shipped. I'm not really sure what the White Sox. I don't know what the White Sox are. Not what they're doing. They're not doing much this offseason, but I don't know what they're trying to accomplish if they hold on to him. Just this is the most valuable he'll ever be. You might as well. You traded everybody else. He's your only asset left. I think it makes sense too. Another name on this list is Josh Naylor. Now, the reason I bring him up is because Josh Naylor, notably a first baseman, also in division, and a lot of Tigers fans want a first baseman. I also think that this price tag would be relatively high, that high enough where I'm not sure the Tigers would be willing to go after it. And then you have the interdivision problem again, where Cleveland may even ask for a little bit more than another team because it is interdivision. We'll talk about that rumor later as well, because there's some speculation that maybe he is rumored to go to the Seattle Mariners, who have been trying to make a big move all offseason and just, I don't know. I still expect them to, but that's kind of an interesting situation as well. Taylor Ward over in LA for the Angels, not for the Dodgers. This is a no-brainer for them to trade. In a different world, I could kind of see this front office going after a guy like Taylor Ward, versatile, good hitter, can play a lot of different positions, does a lot of things well. But I think that the Tigers are really pigeonholed to where they know exactly what they're going for, right? They're going to look at the first base market, whether they bring somebody in or not, time will tell. But they're going to kick the tires on first base. They're going to hopefully address third base, but they're going to look at that market, and they're going to look at right-handed outfielders. If you are anything else besides that, it's probably not a fit. Not that they couldn't mix some stuff around and match. And I mean, Ward, again, can play multiple positions. So, he could find a home pretty easily. But I think that I would still probably be surprised, because I just can't imagine the Tigers are going to make that a super high priority. I think some other teams probably will. Taylor Ward's a pretty solid ball player. Jake Cronenworth, another player that has moved around the diamond, played a plethora of positions for the San Diego Padres over the years. A Michigan man, went to U of M, was a two-way star actually at U of M, was a pitcher and a hitter, and is reportedly on the trade market. He's been on the trade market for like 2 years now, ever since they extended him. It's been like, oh, well, I'm not sure they really love the fact that they extended him. He's kind of on the trade market every single winter meetings and trade deadline now. I maybe like positional versatility, can play first base specifically, has hit well before. It's not been super consistent lately, but like he has at points hit well. I don't know. I think that's kind of a weird one where I'm not sure anybody's going to be really in on Jake Cronenworth. Again, this is the fourth time in the last 20 months that this dude's been on the trade block. So like, I don't know if there's really too much of a market for him. And if there is, I think it would probably require the Padres to eat some of that money. Luis Arias, very interesting one. Can play first base. Doesn't really play anywhere super well defensively. Is not fast whatsoever. But he is probably the best. I don't even know if it's probably the best bat-to-ball contact hitter in the sport. Now, there's always a lot of debate when you bring up Luis Arias. Always. Nobody can bring up Luis Arias and just have like a normal conversation. Everybody always gets like really mad and brings up, but how valuable is he actually? I think there is inherent value on putting the ball in play and whatnot. And he doesn't walk a ton, but he just never strikes out and always is going to put the ball in play. The thing is, he doesn't have any power. There are no extra base hits in that bat. Very low slugging percentage. Like I said, does not draw walks and grounds out a ton because of said, put the ball in play mentality. If the Tigers were to bring him in, he would play first base almost assuredly. I can't imagine they're going to put him back at second base or anything like he did when he was younger for Minnesota. And I know that the dominate the strike zone thing is like not striking out as part of that. I just don't think the Tigers would do that, honestly. And maybe that's just a gut feel that's totally wrong. And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I think the Tigers, that's a good fit. And I think the Tigers would. Maybe you're right. I can't really put my finger on exactly why. I just think it's not a seamless fit. I think, would he be a better first baseman than the production we've gotten out of first base over the last couple of years? Absolutely. But I think this team, we have said all winter, and this is not just me, this is a majority, I feel comfortable saying, of the fan base has been begging for this organization to bring in a power bat. If you're bringing in a first baseman, especially, I mean, ideally, you would like somebody who's not going to bring a ton defensively because they're over at first base to be that right-handed hitting power bat. And Arraez is a lefty contact hitter that has almost no power. So while I'm not sure I'd be like super mad or I'd be furious about it. It's an interesting conversation. I don't think I'm gonna like advocate for it either. I think I'm good. I think there are other fits at first base that are currently available in free agency that are much better fits than the Tigers giving up minor league assets, presumably, for a player like Luis Arraez. There's 4 names left. We'll get into those and then kind of bounce around the league and just talk about rumors and notes from around the sport. We'll do that right after this. Got to talk to y'all today about our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place all of your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Third and final segment of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. As always, Nathaniel Lowe, it confuses me still to this day. So if I said the wrong one, whatever, you know who I'm talking about. I think there is very much a fit here, to be completely honest with you. This is a guy that walks a ton, is a really good defensive first baseman. Hit his OPS last year was 762, but his career OPS is 790. He's 29 years old. You're talking about him on, the right side of 30. He's 3 seasons removed from a 850 OPS, 27 home run, 302 batting average season. That 2022 year was unreal. And while he hasn't matched that, he's been closer to, 760 to 770 OPS in kind of the 15 to 20 home run range. With the amount that he walks, that on-base percentage getting around 360, even 370 at his best. I think that's something that a lot of people would, at this fan base especially, would love to have out of first base. And as we've said a lot, the production that the Tigers have received from first has been next to nothing outside of the second half of 2023. And so I think that this is actually a really, really good fit. And I think that a player like him would do wonders. I don't think that it would cost an arm and a leg to bring him in. I honestly, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think that the Tigers should absolutely, at a minimum, call the Rangers and be like, hey, what are you thinking here? Because I think you could do a lot worse over at first base. Is another lefty to add into your lineup, but a lot of first basemen are going to be lefties. If you need to add a righty, go find an outfielder to do so. Okay, Starling Marte. Not going to go too much in depth on him because we already talked about Starling Marte in an episode. Was that Monday's show? Maybe it was the end of last week. One of those two. We broke down Starling Marte and how I think that fit makes a lot of sense for the Tigers as well. Lane Thomas, kind of a similar vein, a little bit more of a contact hitter traditionally throughout his career, but is somebody for the Guardians. Certainly gave the Tigers some fits in the postseason. But he's just another guy that, like, righty, doesn't expand the zone too much. This year, his swing and miss and his K numbers actually went down a little bit, but I think that's a guy where if they really were set on adding a righty outfielder, that maybe they could go after. But I also think, just like spend a little bit of money and sign a player of the similar caliber in the outfield rather than giving up, assets to bring in a player just of Lane Thomas's caliber. And then Mike Yastrzemski. No, it won't happen. Lefty. The last thing the Tigers need is another lefty outfielder, lefty corner outfielder at that. So fun player, really cool story, third generation in baseball and whatnot. The Giants have honestly been rumored to be on trading him for a while as well. So not sure where he'll end up, but it certainly won't be for your Detroit Tigers. Around the league, we talked about it earlier. Josh Naylor to the Mariners is a possibility. I think the Mariners really are just trying to find big bats that they can bring in for pitching. This was such a phenomenal season for them on the mound. And while the hitting did get a little bit better in the second half, they desperately want high-end bats. And Naylor, for the first half of the season at least, was legitimately one of the best hitters in the sport. Cooled down a lot in the second half, obviously, but is a big power type of hitter that can get on base as well. I think the Mariners should keep shopping. I think that is kind of a nice fit. I would be thrilled for Naylor to leave the American League Central and not have to play him as much. I have no issue with that. He has not as much in the postseason, but he has certainly had his fair share of big swings against the Detroit Tigers. So I'm okay with that. Arenado reportedly declining a trade to the Astros, I think is fascinating. Because I think Nolan Arenado would put up crazy good numbers at Houston. His power is gone. His back seems like it's completely gone. The swing, the bat speed isn't there anymore. And you put a righty there with the Crawford boxes. He can still play really good defense at third. I think he would do really well. He puts the ball in play a lot. That's a field that generally favors those types of hitters as well. I think he would do well, but he is staying strict to his 6 teams. He's got 6 teams that he wants to go to. It's 5 of the biggest markets and best teams in baseball, and then the Angels. And it seems like he's sticking to his guns. So we'll see what happens there. But that is going to be directly correlated to what happens with Bregman, obviously, right? Another third baseman. And it is rumored and reported by a few national beat writers that the Astros won't match the 6+ years that Bregman won. So there's a few things here. One, you have to ask yourself, okay, are other teams going to give him 6+ years? Because if the Astros won't, but nobody else will either, then that doesn't really matter. But if that is the biggest thing for him, and you're thinking, okay, Tigers, their name's been floated around out there for Bregman. If he wants $200 million and 6+ years, would you do it? That's a genuine question. I'm trying to, gather some results here. I'm polling the fan base. The Astros, who have had him when he was an MVP candidate, reportedly, and reports have been wrong plenty of times, the Astros could sign him to $7,250 tomorrow. But the report is that they don't want to go 6+ years, and that's what Bregman wants. How badly do you want Bregman? How willing are you to lock up a player of that caliber where he's at for 6+ years? Interesting thoughts with Locked On Tigers. The last one, I just want to say, thank goodness that Sammy Sosa is back and allowed to go to Wrigley Field. That was always absolutely ridiculous. I thought it was absurd that the Cubs held the grudge they had, where they were like, no, we're going to take like the high ground here, and we're just going to completely ignore Sammy Sosa, and he's not invited to Wrigley or Chicago ever again and whatnot until he apologizes publicly to us, as if Sammy Sosa like did something personally to the Chicago Cubs besides give them millions and millions of dollars and make them a part of one of the greatest seasons in baseball history in 1998. And look, I'm not advocating for like steroids and corked bats and stuff. I'm still a traditionalist at heart, and I love my baseball and don't want it to really change too terribly much. Like I understand the impact that steroids had, and I don't want players, juicing up again either. But the way the Cubs specifically handled that is egregious. The Giants didn't do that with Bonds. The Cardinals didn't do that with McGuire. Well, maybe a little bit at first, but like they got over it. He got inducted into their, the Cardinals Hall of Fame, and they have Big Mac Land and everything. Like McGuire will forever be associated directly with Sosa. They were together. That was their thing, was the home run race of 98. And one of them, it was like, oh, nothing's wrong, whatever. And the other one got completely, blackballed from his organization. I always thought it was ridiculous. So I'm glad that he, for as much as it probably hurt him to do, swallowed his pride a little bit, just apologize. He's going to be back at Wrigley. I'm happy for Cubs fans, which I don't say too terribly often. But I just, that has always been, for my whole life, really, like one of the more head-scratching storylines in the sport. And so I'm glad we can put that saga, after 20 years almost, to a rest, finally. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. Shout out to every dayers that do tune in every day. We will, of course, be back on Monday, recapping the weekend and talking about more off-season news and notes. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you on Monday, baby. Go Tigers.